Hi, welcome to Season 5, Episode 1 of Everyday NLP Bites. If you've not been watching or listening to earlier podcasts, I'm Florence Madden. I'm an NLP trainer and coach based in Cumbria in the north of England. I'm also the author of The Intention Impact Conundrum and the co-author of Everyday NLP. In this season, I'm looking at language patterns and I've entitled it, What Are You Saying? And the reason for choosing that is that some of the ways in which we speak and some of the patterns that we use are so commonplace. It's not always obvious to us what we are saying, or indeed what impact what we're saying is having on ourselves or possibly on other people. I was really delighted at the end of season 4 to have as my guest Sue Knight. And she quoted Diane Glancy, who said that words, as I write them or as I speak them, are the path on which I walk. Not only do I like that quote, but it made me smile for another reason too, because it reminded me of Jim. Jim is somebody who was on an NLP course with me some time ago and has since become a friend and indeed a coach in his own right. But we were looking at language patterns and Jim was struggling with that and told me so. He said, I'm just not getting it. And it's not surprising because the language patterns that I'll be referring to through these podcasts are, as I said, so commonplace that initially you think, well, what could be wrong with that? So I went home that evening and I started to think, well, how else can I explain the significance of these to Jim? And I came up with the yellow brick road. So the yellow brick road that you can see behind me now is in tribute to Jim. And I came back in the next day and I said, Jim, think about our lives as a yellow brick road, our path to success and happiness, which is being blocked by thinking and beliefs that are getting in our way. And these language patterns are evidence of the kind of thinking and negative beliefs that could be getting in our way. So by starting to recognize these patterns and asking ourselves some questions, then we can start to clear our path much more. And perhaps also helping others to clear their path as well. These language patterns are known in NLP as Metamodel. This is the first NLP model, and some people would think of it as the most significant one. So throughout this series of podcasts, I'm going to be looking at different metamodel patterns. And probably more significant still, what questions can we ask ourselves principally, and perhaps other people as well, to start to unravel these and start getting us looking and thinking differently. Because the language that we use is evidence of what we're thinking and feeling at a deeper level, and perhaps unconsciously thinking or feeling or believing at a deeper level. But once we actually express these, that has the effect of reinforcing these negative thoughts or beliefs, because our unconscious mind hears everything that we say to ourselves. The writer Samuel Beckett said that words are the clothes that our thoughts wear. So our words are showing us what we need to pay attention to. And also throughout this series, I'm going to be drawing my examples from what I've heard that week, either on the media or in conversations. So let's make a start. I wonder how often you have heard people say things like, I know that she's thinking that, or the fact that he says this, that really means he means that. These are examples of mind reads. where we are presupposing that we know what someone else is thinking, even though we might have fairly scant evidence for that. So mind reads. This week, I've been listening to news and media outlets, and something that I've heard on a number of occasions from different commentators is the PM wants to see the headline, "Boris saves Christmas." As I record this, we're right in the middle of all this speculation of what lockdown will mean over Christmas this year. Now, the people who are saying this is what the PM wants have probably not spoken to the Prime Minister. And they may well be right that that's the kind of headline that he wants. But it is a mind read nonetheless. It is what they are speculating and not what they actually know for a fact. And you may be thinking, well, actually, that probably doesn't make a lot of difference unless, of course, you're actually working around the Prime Minister. But we don't have to go that far to actually observe and to experience mind reads. I was talking to someone else this week who's been diagnosed with COVID-19. He is not suffering seriously from it, but nonetheless, he's quarantining at home. He had been talking to a colleague over the phone and explaining that he was quarantining and why. And he said that after that conversation, he felt judged by her reaction. I asked him why, and he said, well, it's just the way she said, really. And he didn't take the conversation any farther. And it's when you get down to the relationships that we have, personal or work, that mind reads start to make a difference. Because if his feeling is that that colleague has judged him in some way, then there's every likelihood that that will affect their working relationship in some way, unless they resolve it. So the key question for dealing with mind reading in ourselves is to say, how do I know that? And what we may find is that something that we are presupposing that someone else thinks, we may have very, very little or no evidence for that. And when we realize we have no evidence for that, then that's going to start to change our thinking about that person. On the other hand, maybe there is evidence for it. And in that case, you're in a position to have a further conversation with that person and potentially resolve it. But the point is that just assuming that we know what someone else is thinking and taking that for a fact is actually just going to create problems and not resolve anything. So what I've been talking about up to now is noticing and asking the question of ourselves, how do I know that? And of course, this is a question that we can use to help other people. So with the person who said, I felt judged. Well, I asked the question, how do you know that? And the evidence that he came up with was pretty scant. So that's caused him to rethink, well, perhaps it's just how I'm feeling at the moment that has made me feel a little bit thin-skinned, or perhaps, looking for something that's not there. So by just asking that question, you can really get someone to start reappraising their thinking and changing their feelings about perhaps themselves or the other person involved in the conversation. One point to be cautious of, though, is that when somebody has it in their head that this mind read is true, then we need to proceed with respect and with caution, because it's how they see it. So if you feel it appropriate when you hear a mind read from somebody else to ask them that question, then ask it with respect of their situation and how they're seeing things. Because after all, the point about using any of these metamodel questions of ourselves or of someone else is to help. It's to help them see things differently. And they will do that far more effectively from a position of rapport with you. So start by looking out for your own mind reads, the things that you are making assumptions about. And ask yourself the question, how do I know that? And make some changes for yourself. So I'd like to finish on a quote from Rita Mae Brown, who said, "Language exerts hidden power like the moon on tides." And next week, I'll be looking at some of the other language patterns that exerts power over our thinking. So in the meantime, thank you for watching or listening, and please join me again next week for another language pattern. Bye for now.